Welcome, fellow guests and fellow Toastmasters. How many of you are afraid of heights? How many of you here are afraid of jumping out of an airplane? A fair bit. Let me start off by saying I'm extremely afraid of heights. Growing up, or rather, I was extremely afraid of heights. Growing up, I had this phobia of heights. I would feel afraid to stand on tall buildings and look down. When me and my little sister would go to an amusement park, she would be the one getting on all the dangerous rides, on all the roller coasters, and all the giant wheels. And I would stand there watching her bravely and wonder, could I ever do this? When I would get on these giant wheels, I would feel like I'm being thrown from the top of a mountain with no support. Fast forward a couple of decades, me and my friends were hanging out and we had a crazy idea of doing an impromptu or an unplanned skydiving trip the next day. And I was all up for it. I said, you know what, I'm scared of heights, but let's do this. This is the best way to squish your fear. Let's just go for it. Let's not think more. So the next morning, we all set pack in my friend's car. My friend's driving, we're all on our way to Long Island Skydiving Center, and we're driving through these dusty roads, and we're all wondering, was this even a good idea, considering we were a little hungover? But we decided we should just go for it. When we landed at the center, there's a lot of documentation that comes along the way. So they asked us to sign this paperwork that tells you that all the liability is purely on you. And they also ask you to video record this, and when you're mentioning you're aware that this could lead to personal death. I felt very silly doing this. Nevertheless, we all did it, and we were all taken to this area where it was like a little den where people were strapping us on. So we all went there in like a very small minivan. There are no seats on this van, so we are just all sitting on the floor, get escorted to the den. While in the den, we have a lot of friendly instructors who are smiling and saying, oh, this is going to be the best day of your life. You're going to have so much fun. And they start strapping us with all the protective gear that we need. Now, we start getting escorted from this den onto the runway where the planes were standing. And these planes were extremely small. They were not those big planes that I had imagined. I thought all four of us could fit in, but that was not the case. We had only 2 people per plane. So since this was a tandem skydiving experience, that means you have an instructor who is attached to your back. I say that as if it's an object. We decided that we would be in a situation where 2 friends would go into one plane and the other 2 would go in the other plane. So I walk in and we climb inside the plane. There are no seats. So we are just sitting down, and as soon as I climb, I turn facing the tail of the plane, and I sit down and I'm resting on the seat of the pilot. And my friend is sitting here on the other end, diagonally across me, and he's just watching me. And I want to show you the pilot, I want to show you my instructor. My instructor was not the most friendliest of people, so that did not help my experience. As we started to progress, we were up 5,000 feet, and I started to wonder, was this a good idea? I started to think about all these crazy thoughts. What happens if this doesn't work out very well? What happens to my MacBook? What about my family? Soon I decided, enough is enough. Let's get all these thoughts out of your head and just enjoy the experience. I sit there nervously thinking about all these things, and clearly my friend can tell there's something going on in my head. Instead of comforting me, he starts kicking me and smiling at me because he knows what's going on in my head. We start going further up, and now we're at the 10,000 feet mark. And this is when I started to think, wow, this got real. This is really happening. And I was petrified. This was the point where I felt like this is too much. But I was wrong. There was more to come. My friend who was sitting diagonally across me started to crawl towards the entrance. And they opened this entrance, and there's a lot of air coming in. And I'm thinking there's going to be some activity happening. I'm waiting for a few more minutes for things to happen. But before I know it, my friend and the instructor just jump out and disappear. Poof. And they're falling. And they fall and float in the air as I watch. And I'm thinking, is he going to make it? Is that parachute going to open? It probably did. Soon after, while I was thinking about all these things, I hear a voice from the back of my head. Come on, it's time to go. And I'm thinking to myself, what, already? Let me absorb this in. Let me just make peace with the fact that I have to do this. And he tells me, all right, we have to go now. He tells me, my instructor tells me, why don't you sit here and put one foot on this railing right here outside the plane. And I do so. As I put my foot on the railing, I see all this wind that's blowing towards me, and I can literally see my calf muscles float away in one direction. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should just go back. It's okay, I don't want a refund. Let's just call it a day and we'll forget about this whole thing. But soon after, my instructor told me, all right, let's do this. We're about to jump and it'll be fine after. So as soon as I was making peace with this and about to jump and take the leap, I sensed a little push from behind and we started to fall. Now my instructor didn't think it was necessary for me to know that he planned on doing a reverse somersault in the air to start out with. So my first few seconds were horrendous. I was just thinking, wow, what's going on? I have no idea why I'm in this. Did this go wrong? And as soon as that happened, the free fall began. And then I was stabilized. My instructor asked me to open my hands wide open and just stabilize myself and enjoy the free fall. Once that happened, the feeling is phenomenal. You just know that you've left everything behind and you have no worries in the world. The only one worry you have is, I hope that parachute opens. But it's a phenomenal experience. The moral of the story that I want to leave you with is, if you have a fear that you're trying to get over or accomplish, I would say the best way to do is take that fear head on and face it. And there's nothing else that gives me that satisfaction that I got from doing this and taking that first step. So I'll show you a few pictures. This was me putting my feet out on the rail. This was me jumping right after the backward somersault. And this was the free fall. So I encourage you all to try it and get out of your comfort zone. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster.